Welcome back to The Musical Mind. My name's Chris Cody, and on today's show, I'm going to do a classic album recommendation. It's an album that's not very well known, or at least critically, it's not sort of in the canon of great classic albums, but I think it's a really underrated classic that deserves more attention. It's ELO's classic 1981 album, Time. ELO, of course, short for Electric Light Orchestra. Jeff Lynne being the primary songwriter and performer and producer. Jeff Lynne, probably one of the most underrated 70s and 80s, early 80s producers, went on to work as a producer and performer for the Traveling Wilburys, was close with George Harrison, who produced the Wilburys along with him, but best well known for working with Electric Light Orchestra, his main project. Time is a return to the concept approach of earlier albums like El Dorado, which was another favorite of mine. The conceptual album approach almost invariably gets bands thrown into the prog rock category, which may or may not always be accurate. That's one of the interesting things about the album is, in my opinion, is that as the boundaries of cool and uncool start to blur and tastemakers start to realize that bands like Sparks and ABBA ever existed, ELO, traditionally a band that's kind of thrown into this sort of uncool category, are starting to emerge as a band to pay a little bit more attention to. I think 1981's Time is the pinnacle of ELO's synthesizer powers. It's all over the album, really great synthesis, lots of arpeggiators in there. There's a new wave influence on some of the album, especially songs like From the End of the World and Here's the News. But you've also got that quintessential Jeff Lynne combination of classical type harmonic structure and orchestration, chromaticism, with a nod to classic rock and roll, all joined together by this sort of synth pop disco hybrid. The disco elements aren't as present on this album as they are on some of the earlier albums, but they're still there with the strings, the flashy, fast string lines, and you get that, right off the bat in the opening anthem, Twilight. Jeff Lynne is, I think, one of the era's best pop vocalists. He's got such a chameleon-like voice. He's got this real delicate, sweeter, softer approach. He's got a high-pitched, nasally kind of biting sound. And then he's got this ultra cool, darker kind of sound, and he goes from one to the other on a dime. He really makes great use of the multiple ranges and qualities of his voice, and he does this all over this album. I find this to be one of the most interesting and best things about Jeff Lynne, especially in songs like Here's the News. It's that ultra cool sound to his voice. It's hard to describe other than cool. There's a sort of awareness to the quality of his voice. It's tough, but it's not macho. It's an indifferent sort of quality that just comes off as, well, I hate to keep saying it, but cool. And back to his talents as a producer, he's just really great at covering a whole range of larger textures and sonic possibilities. The way that he focuses the harmonies, there will be groups of vocal harmonies, sort of Queen-like, really rich, thick harmonies going on, and he focus EQs them in such a way that really brings them together into one cohesive sound. And it doesn't sound so much like there are multiple voices singing separately. They're joined together in this really forward, mid-rangey kind of way that really cuts through the mix. Time is actually, as it turns out, quite an influential album. Bands like Grandaddy cited as a big influence on their fantastic album, The Software Slump. Also, Steve Winwood cites the album as an influence. Lady Hawk. Now, about some of the songs on the album. It's got this great intro with this ominous invitation from the vocoder. I have a message from another time, etc. And that vocoder will appear throughout the album in a few other places. In fact, Jeff Lynne uses the vocoder quite a lot in even early recordings. But this intro sets up the mood of the concept, which is there's a story about a guy who travels into the future to 2095 from 1981 and can't deal with it. But in a larger sense, it speaks to the fear and anxiety about the depersonalization of what the future will bring or what it may bring. And that idea is probably best shown in the track Yours Truly 2095, which comes in early on the album and is really one of the highlights of the whole album. There's that vocoder put to great use. It's got a real driving motion to the song, great chorus. Ticket to the Moon, a Baroque-like ostinato bass balanced with some rich harmonies in there. The Way Life's Meant to Be. We're getting into Jeff Lynne's interest in classic rock and roll, sort of a Latin ballad rock and roll kind of sound. And he makes use of that focused EQ again in the harmonies, especially on this track. And they sound really great. Another standout song in the album is From the End of the World. It's got a really cool synthesizer lead in there that comes off as kind of corny initially, but again, it's that sort of contemporary breaking down of cool and uncool and an open-mindedness for sounds of the early 80s. If you put aside those potentially corny elements, it's really kind of a deceptively cool line and song in general. And as far as synth stuff goes, Here's the News, not only one of the best songs on the album, maybe the best song. It's as far as the synth writing and arranging, it's really kind of the peak of the album, and also makes really great use of samples. And the song, while the album conceptually takes place in the future, this song really speaks to the present corrupted state of commercial news. And Jeff's voice is at its coolest in this one. There's a great music video for it too that I'll post a link to. And at the end of the song, the descending chromatic harmonies are just incredible, really, really great. Towards the end of the album, there's a track called 21st Century Man, which is almost a total Lennon and McCartney kind of knockoff. Of course, Jeff Lynne was a huge Beatles fan, and that influence definitely comes through. It's kind of a Lennon and McCartney slow ballad type, a little bit more of the Queen sound in there too. Probably the most famous song in the album, Hold On Tight, comes in towards the end. Hold On Tight, which incidentally was the last top 10 hit that ELO ever had. And you've probably heard it in TV commercials. Great song, and again, Jeff's classic rock and roll influence comes through in here. He's just got a great instinct for that sound, and overall his music instincts are really sharp, which makes this album a great listen, I think. Again, it's not the most well-known Electric Light Orchestra stuff, but it's kind of grown to become my favorite. I think Jeff Lynne is brilliant. I think he's one of the best producers from that period. And I hope you guys check it out, because I really, really think it's worth a listen. So I'll post some links where you can check it out and so on. And let me know what you think in the comments. And I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, take care.